Hey guys, welcome to the Bourboneering YouTube channel. I'm your host Austin. Let's get started. So today I'm going to walk you through kind of an elevated old fashioned. It's a classic old fashioned recipe. I'm just changing some ingredients up to elevate its flavor. This is kind of my go-to, one of my go-to old fashions. I'm going to explain each ingredient, but first I'm going to make the cocktail because I got ice here and I don't have a freezer on set yet. So let's go ahead and make it. I'm going to talk about the ingredients a little bit while I'm making it, and then I'm going to go in more detail afterwards. So got your mixing glass here. I'm doing this I want to say the mixologist way, but the closer to mixologist way than the last time I made an old fashioned on the show for my basics. So I always start with the bitters. Today I'm using chicory bitters and I'm using chocolate bitter, kind of a chocolate chicory flavor, and it works really well with this bourbon, but we'll get into that in a second. So I like 3 dashes of each. These smell good. That just adds a nice flavor here. I looked like I'm rushing because I don't like to over dilute my cocktails. I actually dilute it a little bit less than a lot of people, which is why everything came out the freezer, including the ice ball and the glass and the mixing glass. So this is Demerara syrup. So I took a 1-to-1 ratio like my simple syrup video. I'll link my cocktail basics down below. And it's just, I made it myself. You'll figure out you can see how to do that. I'm not using a pre-made mix this time. I'm going to use 1/2 ounce here of the Demerara. Simple. And I put this in here first because I like to wash out my jigger with my bourbon, since this is kind of sticky. That out the way. Now this bourbon, I'm going to talk a little bit more about it after I make it. I've been on a Belle Meade kick recently. And if I'm making an old fashioned, I like using bourbon with the chocolate and chicory. I think it plays better than rye in general. But I like using higher proof, at least 100 proof in my old fashions. And I really like it whiskey forward. So I'm using 3 ounces of this bourbon here. This is Belle Meade Reserve cask strength. I'm gonna go it a little bit. This is not available. Well, it might still be available in some stores, but this is not being made anymore. All right, I've got all our ingredients in there. Almost all our ingredients. Give it a nice mix. This is to dilute as well as mix everything together. Like a good 15 seconds-ish. Get a little bit of dilution in there. Ooh, there goes some ice. All right. Notice my technique of kind of staying on the side of the glass there. That's kind of not upper level, but going from just making an old fashioned to, a little more fancy mixologist kind of note there for mixing in a glass. Pour it over my ice sphere here. Fills this glass up nicely. Ooh, it looks really cool with the frosted glass. Hope y'all can see that. All right, last step before drinking. Take my Traverse City Premium Cocktail Cherries. You can use Luxardo, anything you want, any kind of fancy quote-unquote machina. I like getting just a little bit of juice with this because this is such a high proof. It adds a little bit of sweetness. Not too much juice, just a little bit with that cherry. And give it just a little bit of a stir, not much. Also kind of cleans off your spoon here. Normally I make this in my kitchen and I have a lot more room. All right, so I'm gonna give you some tasting notes on this before it gets too watered down, but I'm gonna enjoy it, and then I'm gonna go into detail on the rest of my ingredients. This bourbon is really spicy in my opinion, almost like a rye spice, but it's got a nice deep sweetness, and that works really well with the chicory and the chocolate. I would almost put if I really wanted to, put like a crispy piece of bacon in here. That's getting a little crazy. We'll do another video on that later. But I can really taste the bourbon, the Demerara simple, which Demerara is kind of like a light brown sugar. It's just not totally processed, so it's got some of that molasses in it. Really rounds down the alcohol spike. Even with 3 ounces of bourbon in here and just 1/2 ounce of the Demerara, works perfectly. Not too spicy. That little bit of cherry juice helps that as well. All right, that's delicious. You taste the bourbon. Now you can do this with any bourbon, any rye really, and it really stands forward. You just got to pick, when you pick your bitters, you want to pick something that works well with the bourbon. And you can even do that by just taking a neat pour or over ice and adding just a few dashes of a single type of bitter. And that really tells you how those flavors will play along. So that's what I kind of do when I experiment. That or just make a bunch of old fashions, which are delicious. All right, let's go down the list of my ingredients and talk a little more in detail. Start with bitters. These are from the cocktail experiment. There's a experimental bitter, which is the chicory, and a modern bitter, which is the chocolate. A classic old fashioned has Ango or some sort of, I can't think of the word, aromatic bitter. Sorry. But this really plays well with the type of whiskey I'm using. I also commonly use Angostura orange mixed with the chocolate walnut or even this chocolate. And that makes like a kind of chocolate orange old fashioned, which works really well with a rye or a high spice, rye spice bourbon. Bitters are fun to play with. Now these are from Louisiana, so I like keeping these, keeping it local if I can. Syrah de Saison is a great simple syrup to use. It's local for me in Lafayette, Louisiana, close to it. All right, simple syrup. Like I said, it's Demerara, which is kind of halfway between brown sugar and table white sugar. It's not as processed as a little bit of brown sugar, but it's not super overpowering with the molasses flavor. I like using it. That's kind of my go-to for old fashions in general if I'm not using like a Syrah de Saison. It's easy to make, just as easy to make as the white simple. Same process, just this is what it comes out with. And you can easily stack some vanilla or some cinnamon with this to kind of elevate it a little bit. That's kind of what Syrah de Saison. Again, I keep telling them I love that brand. Talking about them, they have a little bit of vanilla and cinnamon there. It's fantastic. I'm gonna finish with the bourbon. So the premium cocktail cherries, this is from Traverse City. I've talked about them 1,000 times. It's a little bit sweeter than a Luxardo, but it's still real sweet. The sweetness all comes from the cherry itself. It's a real cherry. It's not like one of those cocktail cherries that you see on top of ice cream sundaes. Fantastic stuff. I almost use some of this juice, and I often do when I empty the barrel, as a simple syrup itself. And you notice me, I use half an ounce of simple syrup, kind of going back to that, and a little bit of that. That's because I use so much whiskey, a 3 ounce rather than a 2 ounce. For a long time, I was like, garnishes don't really matter. They're just, make the drink look pretty. But it really adds an extra layer of flavor to your cocktail, whatever you're making. What I would often do I'm not good at it, but take a peel off of an orange or a lemon and just, give it a little squeeze and rub around the glass. That's a great way to add flavor. It's just, for me, I'm not at the level that I just keep those around because they go bad before I can use them all. And if I just use them for the skin and the juice, I'm working on that. I don't make enough cocktails. So finally, let's get to the bourbon here before this melts all the way. Love Bellmead. You've heard me. Last week I did a flight of finished Bellmead bourbons. This is their reserve. I believe it's a blend of their 6 and 7 year old source bourbon. Nelson Greenbrier Distillery is the one who bottles this. I talked about this. Met their master distiller a while back. He is a fantastic guy, Charlie Nelson. If he does an event around you, I highly suggest checking out. He's easy to talk to. He's a great storyteller. I mean, it's a true story. It's his family story, but he's great at telling it. Super entertaining. But anyway, so they used to release this in batches at cask strength, and they all tasted, a little bit different being batched like that. They decided, because their distribution actually got nationwide, or at least continental US wide, they wanted something a little more consistent. So I actually have a bottle up there signed by Charlie. They're now, when they release the reserve, it's always at 108.3 proof. I believe that's the proof. And it's a little more consistent flavor, which is great for a cocktail for an old fashioned, and it tastes amazing. Don't get it wrong, like, oh, it's not batch proof anymore, it's not as good. It is fantastic. There's going to be some, some of these batches are hit, some of these batches are a little bit less hit. I never had a bad cast strength batch, but the standardized reserve, I think is a great idea. So that's why I'm using this. This one is 111.4 proof, so it's, it's high proof. It really stands out in this drink. Yeah. So that's my old fashioned. That's my elevated old fashioned. That's kind of what I drink if I'm drinking an old fashioned for myself. You saw how fancy. Often I make my first one or two in this, the really precise way, and then after that, I either go to drinking neat or I just make it in the glass and add some fridge ice. At that point, it doesn't really matter. Do what you are comfortable with, what you can handle monetarily, and what you think is good. I mean, if you're fine with the quick, easy way, like I am when I'm 2 or 3 in, do it. That's great. You don't have to do all this. Whatever you like, you do, especially if you're making for yourself. You can even batch this, but... So actually, next week, I'll be filming this today, so I'll have them pretty much side by side. But next week, you'll see a video of me making the exact same old fashioned, but instead of this Demerara simple syrup, I'm using a low carb Swerve simple syrup, and it's a Swerve brown sugar. And I will be using that instead of this and comparing the flavor to see if a low carb simple syrup, a low carb old fashioned is possibly good, anywhere close. And then the whole point of that is I want to take that basic simple syrup and elevate it, so make it a low carb simple syrup with some flavor. All that is, this recipe that I'm getting for this simple syrup next week is from Low Carb Cocktail Guy. I'll talk way more about him next week, but definitely check out his channel. I'll link it down below. All right, guys, thank you for watching. Remember, I just launched my Patreon account, so become a patron. You get, at a certain level, you'll get bonus video episodes. You'll get video versions of my audio podcast, uncut, kind of behind the scenes. You can even join our Discord account. So check all that out below. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy this video, if you want to see more. I make a lot of cocktails. I do a lot of experimental stuff. I have a long-going 1-year-long experiment coming up. I just had the 2-month trial, and I'm going to film some more at 6 months, and I'm going to post it at 1 year. So check out, keep in touch for that. Enjoy what you drink, guys. Let me know what you think. What are you drinking? How do you make your old fashioned? I want to know your recipes. I want to try a bunch of recipes. So please comment that down below. Anyway, that's all I got for y'all. Cheers.